Hi, this is Laura Susan Johnson, and I'm trying to really be quiet because I'm in a house and there's somebody sleeping a few rooms away. Today is July 12th, and today's review is going to be for James Cameron's movie, The Abyss. It's one of my favorite movies of his. I honestly don't know if I've seen a movie of his that I dislike. I have never seen the Avatar movies. Sorry, James. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. The Abyss is the forgotten James Cameron movie, and it's kind of a shame. He put so much work into it, so much thought, and he had so many... He was so enthusiastic, and he worked really hard, and he worked his crew and his cast really hard too, and he put them through a lot of physical stress and emotional stress, and that's just part of the filmmaking process. But it was also such a grueling experience for everybody involved, because it was an underwater shoot, and a lot of things kept going wrong. It was almost one of those movies where you think that the deity above is saying, hey, screw this movie, you guys don't need to make it, it's too dangerous, go home. But they all stuck it out. They were all really good sports, considering J.C. Quinn, an actor who, I don't remember the character he plays, but I'll put it in the video, and needless to say, there are spoilers. J.C. Quinn did not like being underwater for extended periods of time, so he was like, take me off of your cast list, fire me from the film. The conditions are just not what I want to be working with, and this is going to be a long shoot. And then later on, after the film wrapped and everybody went home and they were celebrating and went home and were relieved that the movie was over, he went scuba diving, so he got over his fear of water really quickly. I'm afraid of water, so, if I ever went swimming, I'd be afraid of being eaten by a shark. The one thing you do notice in this movie is the lack of sea creatures. And that I noticed it, but it really kind of was good, because you don't want anything to distract from what's going on with the story. The underwater sequences were shot in I believe it was a non-completed nuclear power plant somewhere in North or South Carolina. And they had a lot of problems with it. One day one of the tanks burst and they lost a lot of water, and another day they had a lightning storm, and they had this tarp to darken the surface of the water so that it wouldn't reflect and make it look really weird and fake looking, and camera problems, filming problems. And they had all these little black beads, and they were kind of weird to deal with. As far as other problems with the cast, Ed Harris almost drowned, and it was really, I would have been traumatized big time. He almost drowned. There were a lot of trained support divers who were supposed to be within reach at all times in case something went wrong with your breathing apparatus or something like that. And he was doing that scene where he went down into the trench with that pink lung fluid that they used, and he did his scene, and he realized his tank was empty, and he's like, where are the guys, they need to come give me my air or I'm gonna drown over here. And it took them so long, it was just like his lungs felt like they were gonna burst. And then this idiot put the apparatus in his mouth upside down, and he was just getting lungs full of water And finally some other guy just like, get the hell away from him, and he put it in his mouth right, and he got the, air instead of water. Oh, and he went home and he cried, and Ed Harris is one of my favorites. I mean, he's so cool. He did this movie just a few years before he did Apollo 13. And Ed Harris is not usually the type of guy that I would, fall for, even aesthetically, but he's so cool. And he's got this ultra-masculine face, an ultra-masculine personality when he's doing the manly thing and the butchy thing and the, take charge kind of thing. Like there's me and then there's God, you understand? But when he has to cry, and he does big crying scenes in The Abyss, and then he did, really subtle crying scenes in Apollo 13 at the end, but he's just so great. He's such a great actor. He's long overdue for an Oscar, unless he's gotten one and I don't know about it. But anyway, he had a near drowning experience, and I'm sure that traumatized him for the rest of his life. There's always this celebrity gossip where he says he hates James Cameron now, but he doesn't appear to hold a grudge. I just don't, maybe he wouldn't work with him again unless it was, hey, promise me this is not having anything to do with being in the ocean, please, or underwater. And then Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, she's kind of a legend that I no longer see anymore. She was in Scarface, she was in The Color of Money. She's been in a lot of stuff, a lot of different kind of like Italian mafia movies. So she made a name for herself. She was in this Civil Action with John Travolta after The Abyss. She's been a star for a long time, but kind of subtle, just doesn't really hog the spotlight. She's just kind of a subtle legend. And she had to do that very famous resuscitation scene after her character, bravely volunteers to drown. And I just, I don't blame her. She had a meltdown on the set because they shot that scene over and over and over again. James Cameron wants everything just right. He wants it filmed, just so. He wants to make sure all the things are done right, all the acting's done right, all the, machines, the way that they're doing the defibrillation paddles and whatnot are being done correctly, and everything's just so. He's got pressures, he's got, Fox executives breathing down his neck and shit. And during one take, the guy who had the projector, he said, "I'm out of film." And I think they were on the verge of like wrapping that scene, and she's like, "Oh my God," and she gets up and she just storms away, because she had her blouse open, because realistically, when you're resuscitating anyone, male or female, their chest has to be exposed. And Kimberly Scott, who plays One Night, I love this gal. She's been in a lot of stuff too. She's just not very prominent. She's there, and she's a woman too, but it's still not fun to have your boobs out in front of all these dudes, even though they respect you. So the guy says, I gotta get new film, and she's just like, we're not a bunch of animals, So she left the set, and they did this really cool thing where they cut a hole in the floor, and they made believe that was sort of her point of view, because she wasn't there during those scenes where you see Ed Harris slapping her, fight, you've never backed down from anything in your life, come on, bitch, fight. That's a hole in the floor, and he's acting his ass off at that. And he cries when, they use older takes and older, scenes that they did, where she's coughing and waking up finally after all those failed attempts to get her back. I mean, everybody did such a great job, and Ed Harris is just such a great crier, So, I mean, he's just so amazing. The studio should have pushed for Ed Harris. They should have pushed for Mary Elizabeth. And last but not least, they did push the Academy for Michael Biehn, the Bean Machine. He killed it as Lieutenant Coffee. He is the quote-unquote villain of the movie. I'm sorry, I respectfully disagree. There were really no villains in this movie at all. No villains, because high-pressure nervous syndrome is a real condition. And though he is a smartass, condescending, slightly sexist, those are the worst traits he had. He was like, okay, what do I call you, sir? And it's like, they've checked out. We don't need your lecture about high-pressure nervous syndrome. I notice he says they checked out. What about you, buddy? Did you check out? I noticed that. And, there are no sooner down there in deep core, the big rig, which is, quite a few fathoms down, that he begins to shake. His hands begin to shake, and he's like, oh, shit. I'm getting it. And he knows instantly that he's made a huge mistake, acting like an asshole. So from there, I don't really demonize him. I sympathize, and I try to empathize even. It's a real condition. Look it up, because it can cause psychosis. It can cause, things, simple things like nausea, vomiting, the shakes, of course. But it really can. The high pressure of the deep ocean water can cause brain abnormalities. And once the hurricane hit and the crane fell down and kind of crashed into the trench and pulled them towards the trench, all communication was cut off. Deep Core couldn't communicate with the Benthic Explorer, which was the ship, and Coffee could not communicate with his ranking superior. So before that, his ranking superior, who I think is more of a jackass than Coffee is, said, yeah, go down there and get some MIRVs. Go down there to that sub. Don't tell anybody from Benthic, which is the oil company. Don't tell them. Just go get those MIRVs. They don't need to know. They're just civvies, who gives a shit? You're here for you're here for a certain objective. We have our own, what do you call it? We're the military, so we're basically superior to these, oil workers. And when, they first go down to this crash sub, the sub crashes at the beginning of the film, so that's basically the very first thing that happens in the film. Anybody who's seen it knows that. And it is a nuclear sub, and it has nuclear devices, and of course all these, and the the military demands, of course, they're it's okay if they demand civvies to go do stuff for them, but they don't have to tell the civvies, what they're doing. They don't have to tell them their secrets and their agendas. That's the word I was looking for. They don't have to tell them anything about it. Immediately, Coffee and Ed Harris's character, Virgil Bud Brigman, He'd rather be called Bud. They clash. They clash a lot. And as always, once you've seen an extended version of Cameron's films, you never really want to go back to the theatrical cuts. Sure, they're shorter. In this case, a little less ham-fisted with the, we're destroying the planet, or we're destroying each other's stuff, and I'll get to that later. But there's more scenes, really great scenes of Virgil and Coffee really clashing. Like, I don't care if your people are operating on bad coffee and no sleep. We need to get shit done. We need to get work done, and I'm the one in charge here. I'm in the military, and you're not. And so he's not a villain. He's just a little dick, There's kind of a difference. And he becomes crazy and psychotic, but I don't equate that with being evil or villainous. I equated that with being sick, needing medical treatment, needing his fucking boss to get down there, in a submersible or something and take his ass to the hospital. So, yeah. Things go really horribly wrong. They do collect some nerves before the big crane accident cuts off all the communication. So they have these nerves that they've been hiding. And in the meantime, Lindsay, they keep experiencing these little power outages, and they only last for maybe a minute or two, and they're wondering what's going on. And every time they have these power outages, they encounter these beautiful sea creatures, like jellyfish, except they're lit with neon. They almost look like those Medusa fish. They're shaped like red hearts and have these glowy things. That's what they encounter, all these beautiful, like, neon, rainbow, pretty creatures, like sea angels almost. And that's not where things get hokey or ham-fisted for me. I didn't mind the existence of a civilization way down in the bottom of the ocean, in the bottom of they called it the Cayman Trench, but it's almost like, what, is it the Mariana Trench? Is that what is it kind of well, they said it was only 2.5 miles deep, so the Mariana Trench is probably way, way deeper than that. And James Cameron almost went down that deep back in 2012, I think. He took his submarine entourage and went way down there. I mean, he went deep. That man he is a pimp. They do get one MERV, or a few MERVs, I guess, and send them up to the superior officer. And then, the crane accident happens and communication is cut off. And in the meantime, Coffee's, illness is getting worse. He's like, who are these glowy things? They see this big tentacle of water kind of wandering around their sleeping area while they're trying to get some rest. And at first they're afraid of it, and then they realize it's just a tentacle of water that this civilization has somehow been able to engineer into kind of more of a solidified, liquid, solid kind of a thing where it can observe these people without harming them. They're not intending to harm anybody. But Coffee has this paranoid idea that they're some kind of secret Russian advanced weapon, and that and immediately he thinks, okay, I need to nuke these creatures. They're Russian. They're a Russian invention or something. Back then it was the Cold War. This was 1989. I don't think this movie was intended to be set in the future, because 2 years after this film was released, the Cold War suddenly ended, quote unquote, and the Soviet Union kind of broke apart. So I just didn't quite understand how Coffee thought these beautiful, glowy sea angels could be an invention of the Russians. How advanced does he think they are? But everything's Russians to him. It could be part of his paranoia. The character that Leo Burmester played was so cool. He really stands up to Coffee at certain points. He's like, we don't like you. You're not going to order us around. We don't work for you. And he really puts Coffee, like, he intimidates him. And there's this one point where Coffee's trying to kill Virgil, because he's a Navy SEAL. He's like, he knows how to fight, whereas Virgil's barely, can throw a punch. He's not a fighter. He's just a regular civilian trying to make a living. But I forget what his name is. The character's name. I know the actors' names real well, but the characters' names they escape me. But Leo Burmester's character just punches Coffee like into next week. It was awesome. He was still dead set on taking that Merv down there and just blowing up that civilization down in that trench. And how is he going to get down there? I mean, he's not thinking anything through. The pressure's going to kill him. So they have this big fight. They get into these little submersible kind of propeller-powered little things that they ride around in. Coffee gets into one, Lindsay and Virgil get into the other one, and they have this big old, like, bumper car kind of fight. And they damage each other's vehicles. And the look on Coffee's face when he finally is they both have lost power. They've both crashed into each other so much that they've damaged each other's vehicles beyond repair. And Coffee's looking up at him like, oh my God, what have I done? And he's kind of like reaching up at him, and Lindsay kind of like reaches down at him like, oh, do you know what you've done here? And it's like he's saying, I regret this, I'm sorry, I'm full of remorse. It's like he's had the sense knocked back into him just for that one moment, and then he starts sliding down into the abyss, and it's just, to me, it's sad. I'm sure a lot of people said, yay, the bastard's dead, but I thought it was sad. I really kind of, I used to ask other fans of this movie, why was he cutting himself with his hunting knife or whatever knives they give to those Navy SEALs? Why was he under the table cutting his his arm? It's like a self-cutter, like teenagers do, when they self-mutilate, self-harm, and I'm like, why is he doing that? And they're like, it was just part of his psychosis. It was so stressed out and he was so crazy and stressed out and full of anxiety and panic and paranoia, and he was just letting off some of the pressure. It was like they were understanding of it because they were like self-harmers, I think, that I spoke with. And I was like, wow. And that was really gruesome looking. It was pretty good special effects. So it was really sad. And once Coffee is gone, this really dramatic scene happens where Lindsay and Virgil's little submersible craft starts filling rapidly with water, and they have no way to get, the deep core rig is quite a swim away, and the water is filling up so fast that one of them's gonna drown at least. There's one suit, Virgil's wearing it, and she's like, you're a better swimmer than I am, why don't you swim back and bring me another suit? And he goes, this thing's filling up with water so fast, you're gonna be drowned by the time I get back. And they talk for a few moments, really, because it floods that quickly. But she says, well, if one of us is gonna drown, let it be me, and then you can tow me back to the rig, and you guys can all resuscitate me. And he's like, no, 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 I can't do this. Let you put on the suit, and I'll just leave me here, and I'll die. She's like, and then they finally, because they've been estranged, kind of in the process of a divorce, for whatever reasons, you know, and they're outlined in the extended version a little bit better. But they argue. He says, fuck logic, I'm not going to lose you. And she's like, I don't want to lose you either. So they finally agree. And of course she's like, no, this was a bad idea. I'm scared. I'm so scared, oh Virgil. And she lets herself drown, and he swims her back to the big rig, which is, I don't know, 100 yards away, 500 yards away. It's a long swim. But he does have his breathing apparatus and his suit, so he's fine, and she's dead. And they do that resuscitation scene I talked about, where she, you know, during the filming of it, they ran out of the film and stuff. It was so well done, so well acted. And after she recovers, they want to get back up to the surface and, you know, get on with their lives and stuff. And, you know, Coffee is down in the bottom of the ocean dead, but he still has a live nuclear device. And it has some kind of timer. So they have to get down there and deactivate that thing before it blows up those friendly alien creatures. So Virgil decides he's going to do it. And how are you going to do it? That pressure is going to kill you. Well, the Navy SEALs have this, and it's real. It is a real thing, and they really did do it to those. They used about 5 rats, I believe, 5 white rats, so that the rats were taken care of. They received antibiotics. It's really a real invention that existed even back in the late 80s, and it really is a breathable form of nutrient-rich, you know, like oxygen-rich fluid. And when you see those rats submerged in that stuff, it's real. It's not special effects. It's not fake rats or anything like that. And the any version of the film in like Britain or anything it excludes the scenes of the rats being submerged because you know, they deemed it kind of like animal cruelty, and James Cameron said no, we didn't hurt those rats. And there were so many takes. It looks like that rat was submerged for like a minute or whatever, but there's so many takes. It's movie magic, you know. It's editing. You know, the rats were put in there for a moment and then yanked right back out, and their lungs were drained. They were taken to the vet and given lots of antibiotics so they didn't get any kind of lung infections. None of them died of pneumonia or anything. So it still makes me a little uncomfortable, but knowing that, you know, he did all that for the rats. And he's vegan, you know. I always, you know, when somebody's a vegan, they're after my own heart. So Bud puts a special helmet on, and he gets to try this pink liquid, and because the trench is so deep, this pink liquid's basically the only thing that's going to keep his face from, you know, imploding inward, basically. So he slowly makes his way down the trench, and he retrieves the bomb. It's hard for them to, even with this fluid, the pressure is so immense at such a low depth. The fluid can only help so much. So he starts to kind of experience, you know, tremors and hallucinations just like Coffee did. And he has these big, thick, you know, gloves on and this little keypad to have to type on because he can't talk because it shuts, you know, this liquid will let you breathe, but it won't let you swallow or talk. So the only way he can communicate is by typing on a keypad. So they notice his typing becomes a little bit, sloppy, and they think that he's, when he says he sees these aliens, they say, oh my God, he's losing it. And they just don't really believe. They haven't seen them the way Lindsay and Bud and Bud's people have seen them. So Bud gets down there and he defuses the bomb, guided by their instructions. And then he notices he's completely out of oxygen. And they're all upset because they thought he'd have enough to get back up to where they are. And he just kind of passes out. And then he wakes up and he's surrounded by these beautiful, neon, glowing, iridescent angels. Now, in the extended version, you get a long scene involving the aliens, as I call them now, because they are an alien race living on the ocean's bottom. You get a scene, and it's pretty poorly acted by a bunch of extras and by this one news reporter. We're staying right here. We're going to stay right here and cover this story. Oh, just awful acting. But the aliens are kind of like controlling it. They're making it happen, and they're showing Bud these videos of Nazi Germany and atomic bomb explosions, mostly, which are test explosions, because, as a society, we've noticed, just looking at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, how bad it can be when you drop an atomic bomb. Most of the footage you will see of atomic bombs, aside from Nagasaki and Hiroshima, are test, like Bikini Island or whatever. It's like, yeah, we get the message. A lot of human beings are awful, and a lot of people are nice and decent and believe in decency. We get that. I don't think we needed all of that and that big tidal wave. And then this one little thing, causes them to decide that humanity's worth sparing, and it's Bud's, message, I love you, I love you, you're my wife, that he typed. And it's like, that's what caused you to tame that big tidal wave and have it recede back in the ocean? It sounds a little bit kind of like, make you puke sappy. That's the only kind of problem I had with the movie. Up until that segment with all the tidal waves and the bad acting, the extras and the TV reporter and this alien race kind of judging human beings and stuff. Until that happened, it was like, it's a great movie. I would have been satisfied with, they rescue Bud. They show him that, they appreciate that he loves his wife, and they thank him for defusing the bomb, because that makes them believe that the humans trust them and that they can coexist. That's all I would have needed. And Bud and Lindsay, have their reunion scene and kiss, and the movie's over. I would have been perfectly happy. I think that Fox should have pushed for an Academy Award for all three of the principal leads, Harris, Mastrantonio, and Bean. The theatrical cut feels incomplete without all the really great scenes with Leo Burmester, putting coffee in his place, and without coffee and Virgil butting heads, and different things like that. The Linda Ronstadt song, me and my mom are big fans of hers, and we love her, and she can't sing anymore because she has Parkinson's, and stuff like that, really adds to the story. James Cameron really makes good people stories. It's really weird how he makes all these action flicks And he puts these people in them, real people. Alright, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.